The selection process for the Hitchens Prize is not quite as complex as the selection process for the Nobel or the Man Booker, but it is a process nonetheless. A process nonetheless with a fair amount of back and forthing and even the occasional shriek of, "You can't be serious." But this year, when one of the jurors, hot out of the gate, proposed Graydon, there was instant silence on the lines. And this silence lasted for about 5 seconds, followed by a raucous and spontaneous explosions of yes and many high fives. Indeed, the selection process was so speedy, so smooth, so unanimous that we have decided that we are going to give the award every year to Graydon. Ad perpetuum, I believe is the Latin, provided, Graydon, that you host the dinner, which I think is the least you could do under the circumstances. But to quote from the press release, thank you, Amy Bell, the indispensable Amy Bell, that went out announcing this year's prize, if I may quote, "No one did more to provide Christopher Hitchens with a platform than Graydon Carter. For 2 brilliant, exhilarating decades at Vanity Fair, Graydon and Christopher were de facto collaborators. One cannot think of a more appropriate recipient of this year's prize than Christopher's patron, confrère, and devoted friend, Graydon Carter." The day after Christopher died 6 years ago, has it been 6 years? Is my math right? Yeah, I think I can handle that math. Graydon wrote this in his tribute to him. "Christopher was one of the first writers I called when I came to Vanity Fair in 1992. With the exception of Dominic Dunn, no writer has been more associated with Vanity Fair. There was no subject too big or too small for Christopher. Over the past 2 decades, he traveled to just about every hot spot you can think of. He'd also subject himself to any manner of humiliation or discomfort in the name of his column. I once sent him out on a mission to break the most niggling of laws still on the books in New York City. One such decree forbade riding a bicycle with your feet off the pedals. The photograph that ran with the column of Christopher sailing a small bike through Central Park with his legs in the air looked like something out of the Moscow circus. And we remember that photo. When he embarked on a cause of self-improvement for a 3-part series, he subjected himself to myriad treatments to improve his dental area, delicately put, and other dark regions. At one point, I suggested he go to a well-regarded waxing parlor in town for what they indelicately call the sack, back, and crack. He struggled to absorb the full meaning of this. I wish I'd been there. But after a few seconds, he smiled a nervous smile and said, "In for a penny." A week ago, Graydon wrote me to say, quote, "I'm a bit mortified by the Hitchy thing. Others so much more deserving. Those Weinstein reporters at the Times, among many others. If I may speak for the jury, no mortification necessary, old cock. I'm sure Christopher is looking down." Let me rephrase that. I'm sure Christopher would approve. He loved you. And by giving him that sturdy platform on which he shone so brightly, along with so much else, you loved him back. So we, the jury, think you got it exactly right. And as Christopher would say, Mazel tov. You're a mensch.